I don't think the hourly rate model as it exists at the moment can survive forever. There is going to be more change in the legal world. The business of law cannot possibly be immune from those things, nor should it be.
So what other factors do you think may affect success in the future as far as a law firm partner is concerned?
I think the first thing to understand, and it frustrates me because I'm not sure people always do understand it, is...
Today's guest is Simon Levine, a globally recognized executive leader, mentor, and former global co-CEO of DLA Piper, one of the world's largest law firms. Simon has shaped the future of professional services through his work in technology, innovation, and sustainability.
I think the big difference when you become a leader is authenticity, because it means people will follow you, they'll believe you, they will accept the mistakes and they'll move on from them because everyone makes mistakes. But to be authentic means you've got to be prepared to open up a little of yourself personally to others.
So what, to your mind, are the attributes needed to make the transition from being a successful jobbing partner to a successful department head and then a successful managing partner?
It's a good question. So I could lie. Let's assume no one else is listening to this. I'll tell you the truth, which is...
Welcome to Beyond Billables, lessons from top law firm partners, a brand new podcast where renowned and well-known law firm partners reveal the secrets of their success. I'm Stephen Rodney, formerly co-founder of Fox Rodney Search, previously one of the best-known boutique legal headhunting firms of the last 25 years, and now founder of Integrate Coaching, where we produce tailor-made lateral integration programs for partners joining new firms. For my guest today on this first episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Simon Levine, who for a decade until October 2024 was managing partner and global co-CEO of DLA Piper. Prior to that, he was on the firm's executive in various roles, including global group head for the IP and technology practice. Simon joined DLA Piper in 2005 as the leader of what was then the largest team move from one UK firm to another, courtesy of a very talented headhunter. As a partner, Simon was a leading specialist in intellectual property, sport and media law, recognised in UK and global directories as a leading media and intellectual property practitioner. More recently, Simon has focused on the changing nature of the professional services sector and the opportunities presented by technology, innovation, and new forms of funding in the sector. He's previously been recognised by the FT as the most innovative leader of the most innovative law firm in Europe. Welcome, Simon.
Nice to be with you.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, Simon, tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a partner initially.
Well, let's see. I'll try and do that without taking up the whole podcast. But I was not from a traditional law firm background. So I grew up in Hull, which for those of your listeners who know Hull, they'll know it's actually called Hull, has no H in it. And my dad actually left school. It was sort of wartime, my mum and dad. So they left school at 14 and 16. My dad worked on the docks and my mum was a hairdresser and a secretary, and then they had a little business. So when I left school and went to university, I actually wanted to study my passion, which was history. My dad said to me, and this may resonate with some people, he said, "What the hell are you going to do with a history degree? You'll become a history teacher." Just for those people who are listening who are history teachers, it's a great profession, by the way. And so I thought, well, I'll do the next thing that occurred to me, which was law. And I actually did law. This is all true, by the way, because of Rumpole of the Bailey, John Mortimer's wonderful books, but in the time was on TV. Leah McKern played him. He was a great barrister. If you've never seen it, look it up on YouTube or somewhere. He was a great barrister who basically these fabulous criminal cases during the morning, went to El Vino's on Fleet Street, still sort of exists, got drunk all afternoon on red wine, on Pomeroy's, red wine, whatever it was. And what a great career. So I thought that's what I want to do. And I did a law degree. It's a funny story about that. I'll tell you later. It came back to haunt me. But anyway, I did a law degree. I ended up thinking, what do I do next? Lots of my friends went into investment banking. I had literally no clue what an investment banker is. Arguably, you could say I still don't know what one is. But anyway, sorry to all my friends who are investment bankers. And I went to a law firm and I stayed at that law firm really from being what would now be called a trainee, was an article clerk, all the way through the partnership. And I ended up specializing in IP. They did a lot of work in media. I ended up on my first big cases working for the Beatles and Elton John and Sting and all
Okay.
sorts of people. And it just seemed too good to be true. And I just stayed there and eventually had a couple of wobbles along the way, thought about going in-house. I'd for a couple of jobs I never got. One was at
Okay.
the Telegraph, I remember, a lovely man who was the head of legal then. And then I just stayed and became a partner and yeah, never regretted it. By the way, can
Excellent.
I just, without messing up the whole of today's session, tell you the funny story though? Fast
Yes.
forward 20, 30 years later, head of one of the biggest law firms in the world in Copenhagen, interviewed by the business paper in Denmark about why did you want to become a lawyer? And I told them the Rumpole of the Bailey story. And the next morning, the headline in the business paper was head of biggest law firm in the world went into law to get drunk in the afternoons. Didn't go down too well with my director of comms. But anyway, true story that.
Excellent. Okay. Well, on that note, what is being a successful partner from your point of view, apart from billing a lot? And initially, I'm talking here about sort of being what I would call a jobbing partner.
I think the first thing to understand, and it frustrates me because I'm not sure people always do understand it, it is first and foremost about leadership, internally and externally. And often lawyers, because of the nature of people that go into law, they tend to be driven individuals who tend to
Mm-hmm.
be reward driven. So actually managing lawyers is not as hard as it sometimes is made out to be. You just have to understand what makes lawyers tick.
Mm-hmm.
And I am one. I ended up marrying one of my daughters is a lawyer, and so lots of my friends are lawyers, and people get to become a partner because it's the next step in the journey. They have to be there. They've got to get the title. They want maybe the money that goes with it, the prestige. They want a princess. It's all part of that. But it's easy to forget it's actually about leadership. And it's
Mm-hmm.
about personal relationships internally and externally. It's not just about the billings. And one of the ways in which I think the legal market and the legal sector suffers at the moment is there's almost too much emphasis on what is the number. Now, of
Okay.
course, that's important. It's a commercial world, and I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't for a second suggest it's not important. But underpinning most of that are people that show real leadership qualities. They are good internally with their teams, they're good externally with their clients. They remember their internal clients as they're going up the ladder. Making friends in the firm will get you opportunities where annoying people won't. And you need a team to support you to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, when you do become a partner after a while, if you're there for long enough and you enjoy it enough, it becomes something about legacy. What do you want to be remembered for? Is it about the money? Is it about the cases or the deals? Or is it about the people you've succeeded, in their careers too? And for me, it was definitely the last element of that.
Okay. So you mentioned, first of all, the sort of leadership qualities internally and externally. So were those things that you realized you needed to have as you worked your way up the greasy pole, as it were, in your first firm, or did that come about later on as you became a partner?
So I could say absolutely not. Absolutely clueless. I mean, I fell into the category that I talked about. I was a driven individual.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be successful. I was doing well. I was building a business and I wanted to be a partner. I wanted the title. I wanted to prove myself. It clearly came with the possibility of earning more money. Which bit of that did I not want? And I remember the first week I became a partner. Now, I've been a partner at 3 law firms now, but at that first law firm, I was really pally with all the other associates and the secretaries, the PAs, everyone. I mean, we always used to go out together and socialize together. And I remember the first week, people stopped talking to me. And they just wouldn't share any info or gossip with me anymore. And I couldn't understand it until eventually someone pulled me to one side and said, "Well, you're one of them now." And I went, "What do you mean?" "Well, you're a partner. You're not one of us. You're a partner." And I was pretty horrified by that. And people pretend that isn't the case, but it is the reality. And so, no, I wasn't prepared for it at all.
How did you learn that those were the attributes that you needed? Was it through there's a question I'm going to ask later on, but I can ask you now. Did you have mentors quickly as you were growing up in a law firm, or did they come later? Did you
So
not have any?
that I did have some, but it was happenstance. It came as it went along. So nowadays, as you know, in what you're doing, there's the possibility of getting coaching and help and training. People didn't really do that, and the world was worse for it. By the way, I mean, I'm a big fan of mentoring and coaching. I think they're really important things. I had a couple of partners in particular who, one at my first law firm, one at my second law firm. Well, I was still a relatively junior partner when I left to join there. And
Yeah.
they both seemed, they were very senior, and they both could seem quite austere and quite difficult people, but actually had a really good heart. And they would regularly sort of metaphorically put their arm around me and say, Simon, you know, maybe that wasn't the best day you ever had in the office doing whatever you did. And you've only got two choices at that point. You either take umbrage with it, which people do, or actually three choices. I've seen three things. They either take umbrage and get offended. The second is people lose their confidence and fall apart and go, oh my goodness, I'm terrible and I can't do with it anymore. And the third is the one I chose to do because it was in my nature, which I thought, well, fair enough. Maybe there's a point. There must be a reason why they've said it. I need to go and have a bit of introspection and think about it. And indeed, one of the partners, when I became my first leadership type role, was being a group head or divisional head in the second law firm I was in. And I held my first meeting with the partners, or pretty much all of whom were more senior in age to me, and some of them were very well known for what they did. And I remember this particular partner, who I said had been a mentor, said to me afterwards, I came out and I was so pleased with myself because the meeting went pretty well, I thought. We had some tough things to talk about, and I thought I dealt with it pretty brilliantly, if I say so myself. And he came out and he put his arm around me, literally did put his arm around me. And at the time, he was about 6.5 foot, this guy. And he said, look, I thought you did really well. He said, just one small thing. I went, what's that? He said, when you're the boss and you're the head of something, you don't need to keep telling everybody. Which apparently I'd done the whole meeting, which of course had completely taken away any effect of what I was saying, because the worst thing you can do is say, I'm the boss and I want this to happen. That you've lost the audience at that point. And I went away and felt a bit deflated, and then thought, okay, fair point. I'm going to do better next time. And I do think you have to learn. So I was lucky by happenstance to have some good people.
Okay. So you mentioned, obviously, you gained your first management or leadership role. Well, they're different, obviously, but let's call it management for these purposes at your second law firm. So was that something that you wanted? Something that you wanted to have, or was it come out the blue that someone said, we think you should lead this group? How did that happen?
So those things are not necessarily mutually exclusive, at least in my case. So I could lie, but given let's assume no one else is listening to this, I'll tell you the truth, which is, yeah, of course I wanted it. I mean, I was a driven individual that wanted to get to the next level and the next level and the next level, and I can pretend I didn't, but I did. On the other hand, what I didn't do, I believe I didn't do, there'll be people who've known me in my career that I guess will have a view, I didn't politic for it. And it did, the reason I say it's not mutually exclusive is because it did happen by accident. What happened was the team, there were two elements to this team I was in, between the media and IP side. They didn't really get on. The two leaders were not supported by the other. They were looking for a third candidate, and I was a mid-level person that everyone worked with seemed to like and get on with, and said, why don't you do it? So as much as I wanted it, it did land in my lap probably earlier than thought it would. And actually that repeated itself years later with DLA Piper, because I wasn't looking to be the managing partner at the time. When I became the managing partner, it was just the right time. And as someone once said to me, if you don't take it now, it will never come up again. So sometimes you just have to accept it's not perfect timing, but you've just got to give it a go.
Okay. So moving on then to that period when you're a leader and a manager. I mean, you've obviously had a massive amount of experience in that. So what, to your mind, are the attributes needed to make the transition from being a successful jobbing partner to a successful department head and then a successful managing partner? And are they different from what made you a successful partner initially?
I don't think the underlying skills are different. I mean, people, I have been asked before, what are the most important qualities of being a partner? And I've been asked before, what are the most important qualities of being a leader in a law firm? And I pretty much start from the same place, which is having an element of EQ. You do need a good amount of emotional intelligence. It's a people business. Your intellectual assets are your people in the business, and your clients, your assets, and the way in which you earn your money, and they're all represented by human beings. And so you need a large degree of EQ, and you do need the ability to listen. Yeah, lawyers are really poor at listening. I've had to train myself to listen, because why are lawyers so poor? Because they think they're really clever. Well, they are not. Some are, some aren't. But they think they're clever, and they can't wait to tell someone how clever they are. And one of the reasons why in the consulting world, you may have come across design thinking. And design thinking in the consulting world is about listening to what your client has to say and then working out how to meet those needs, as opposed to trying to effectively give them your pre-packed things that you've already decided.
Yeah.
When you roll design thinking out to lawyers initially, and I've done that in my last law firm, people are going, wow, this is all completely different. And it sounds weird, but it's just as lawyers, you're used to just saying, I know what your problem is, let me tell you what the answer is, without listening sometimes. So the EQ listening bit, I think integrity matters a lot. I think the big difference when you become a leader is authenticity. That is the biggest single issue for me. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is whenever we got anonymous feedback or word clouds or whatever on the team and me, and I used to get that regularly, and not everything was lovely. We got things wrong. But the thing that was most said about me was that I was authentic. That was a good thing, because it means people will follow you. They'll believe you. They will accept the mistakes and they'll move on from them, because everyone makes mistakes. But to be authentic means you've got to be prepared to open up a little of yourself personally to others. And many people feel very nervous about doing that, and they don't want to do that. So you have to be prepared to stand in front of people and talk about your bad days as well as your good days, and that you messed up as well as you succeeded, and that things aren't as good, but they will get better. You have to be prepared to be honest, and that's more than just honesty. It is being true to yourself, and people see through it if you're not.
And so do you think initially as a jobbing partner, then being authentic isn't necessarily crucial, or maybe it's...
I think it's ideal in any human being to be authentic, but the reality is you're going to be in fewer situations where that is going to be put to the test. I mean, you may be with a client and with your own little team, but trust me, there's a world of difference between managing your team of half dozen people and managing a global business of 10,000 people. It's just different. And if people can't grasp that, they're just going to have to try both and work it out, because I promise you, when you get there, it's different. So it's not that authenticity is not important, but I think if you've got good EQ skills, you listen, you've got good integrity and do the right thing, that's important for any partner. I just think authenticity tends to go a little bit beyond that when you're dealing with a mass audience, for want of a better way of putting it.
Okay. And I found the point about listening very interesting, because that's something as a coach that we're trained to do. And it's very difficult, actually, when for a lot of people, including myself, to really focus on listening to people. I think, no one else has mentioned that in my kind of research for this, the ability to listen. How crucial is that, do you think, relative for the success? If you have all...
It's it's my number one thing. Whenever I get asked, I consistently say it's the number one thing you need to do, because when people have an issue, or people want something, or people are worried or concerned about something, if you're not listening and you shut them down immediately, you've lost the audience. They will never come back to you. It won't stop their grievance. It may come back to bite your leg, frankly. And you'll have missed that one opportunity you had to make people understand you do accept what they're doing. Now, listening is not the same as agreeing. I've been in meetings where I've said to people, not necessarily partners, it could be members of our team, whatever, at different levels, and in different parts of the world, by the way, this is a multicultural point. Well, I've listened to them and I've said to them, I hear you. I understand why you're saying it. I just think you're wrong. And they don't. like throw their toys out and go, what do you mean I'm wrong?
Mm.
They really appreciate they've been heard and you've listened. Now you have to explain why you think they're wrong. One of the challenges I'm sure this is going way beyond today's session, but one of the challenges in society is the inability to listen and have discourse. And I have a separate role. I think you know me, Stephen. I sit on the board of something called the Office for Students, which is the higher education regulator. And one of the issues, challenges in university at the moment is whether people you need from all sorts of backgrounds to go to university and listen and have a good discourse. And instead, everyone wants to shut everyone down and argue, say their points right, and not listen. And I think listening is as you can tell, it is my number one thing.
Okay, that's really interesting. Although you obviously haven't worked in a US law firm, as I call it, co-CEO'd a global firm which had a major US presence.
Yeah.
Again, apart from how much you bill, what are the common attributes for success in non-US and US firms, and where do they differ from your point of view?
I think it's the same. I think a lot is said about US firms. I obviously spent a lot of time with my US colleagues, and I've spent time with other leaders of US law firms, and we're human beings just the same as everyone else. What is different is the business culture. The business culture is different, which means sometimes the way in which you're judged, what is deemed a priority for the business, maybe in a different order. But in terms of the personality things that we're talking about, I don't think it's, if you're asking a leader of a US business, you probably will. I'm sure and if you put to them, if they haven't thought about it and said, is listening, having good EQ, integrity, authenticity important? I'm sure they'd say, absolutely it is. And I never saw between me and had a couple of different people in charge of the US side of the business when I was in charge of DLA at my end. And I think insofar as we had disagreements, of course, everyone has disagreements from time to time. I think some of those were down to either business culture or the local economic market pressures. I don't think there were a difference in human characteristics of what's important. I really don't.
I mean, a lot of people perceive that the US firms are much more focused on billing. Therefore, they're more prepared to put up with behavior which maybe in a more UK-centric firm wouldn't be put up with.
Well,
that person is billing a lot, but maybe do you think that's changed now?
I'm not sure it's really true, to be honest. I mean, it's not that I have a problem bashing people. I mean, I love to bash my US colleagues and they love to bash me. I mean, that's half the fun, right? But actually, I don't think it's true for this reason. I think they were more focused sometimes on billing rather than some other things. That's why I said about business culture priorities could be a bit different. But I think I won't give them here, but I can think of and give you a lot of examples.
Oh, go on, give us a couple.
Well, maybe afterwards. Across the city, by the way, not necessarily in my firm, on my old firm, but of people in Europe or the UK who behaved inappropriately. And there's a whole debate about should they go or not because of their book of business or whatever. And I've seen that in the US, and I've also seen examples in the US where some big beasts have been asked to leave because their behavior is just inappropriate. So I suppose what I'm saying, Steve, I think a lot is made of that.
Okay.
I don't think it's so fundamentally different, but I think the business culture, because the business model is different, because you're looking at 2,000 plus hours and the rates are different and the financial focus is different. And, there's maybe less focus on some of the other groupings or cultural things that some international businesses want. Well, I think underlying it all, it's the same.
Okay. So going back to you yourself, what's the best moment you've had as a partner and the worst, and why?
I think as a partner, on one level, the best moment I had was the day I first made partner, because that was special. And when I made partner in 1997, that's something about how old I was, but I was only 6 years qualified then. You couldn't do it now or whatever. I was the only one in that year made up. The firms were small, even the biggest firms are smaller, and it was quite competitive, and it just felt very special. So on one level it was, and I guess the next time I would say I felt that way was the day I became the managing partner of DLA Piper, because again it felt a very unique, special thing. That isn't to say that there haven't been some incredible times, some great legal cases won, some great times together with teams or whatever. There've been lots of them, but I think on a personal basis, those two were quite pivotal moments. I mean, the worst time is really, really easy for me. It was the day that my firm was hit by a cyber attack, and I was the head of the firm, and there is nothing standing between you and potential nightmare scenario of whether your firm can continue to trade. Whereas for everybody else in the business, I mean everybody else in the business, wherever they were, there was one person standing between that and the nightmare, which was me.
Yeah.
So I was it. I was the one everybody looked at, everyone talked to, everyone expected to make sure it would all be okay. And of course, you don't know it's going to be okay. I mean, looking back on it, it probably wasn't anything like as apocalyptic as it seemed at the time, but it was. One thing I would say, though, because we're talking about law firms,
Yes.
the other law firms in the City of London and around the world, by the way, because obviously it hits us globally, were absolutely magnificent.
Okay.
You know, people talk about law firms, you know, always having negotiation and everything else. They offered us space, support, IT help. If we're in court cases, they obviously just went to court with us and said, we don't expect anyone to meet this deadline. I mean, they were magnificent. So there is camaraderie in law, whatever people say.
Okay. So I wondered whether, as the managing partner at the beginning of, well, all through COVID, how bad that was, or was it kind of easier because it was affecting everyone, not just you guys?
That's the key point. So I want to put this in the right way because, firstly, many people died in COVID and it was a tragic situation. So when I'm about to say COVID seemed a bit of a piece of cake after cyber, I don't mean to take it lightly, you know, of all the horrible things that happened to people. But as a manager, two things were different. The first was I had been through a crisis before in a way no one else had. So I was already prepared. I was hardened how to deal with a crisis. And the second was cyber. You have this little dark cloud over you on your own. Everyone else is smiling. You go to, while it's happening, you're seeing your friends at the law firms are acting normally, whereas you're in a pit of despair. Whereas in COVID, everybody was in it together. So it was fundamentally different.
And so in the cyber attack, as I remember, obviously, going back to your point about authenticity and showing yourself, I presume in that instance, there's kind of two parts to you, aren't there? There's one part which carries on being authentic. There's the other part which obviously is not going to necessarily say to people how bad it might be and how much
it's very perceptive, Stephen. I don't want anyone to think that you're not perceptive, having known you for a while, but that is genuinely very perceptive. I mean, you're right. There's a part where you have to get used to the idea of being authentic. Doesn't always mean to say you tell everything to people. It sounds a bit weird, but you can be authentic without having to tell everyone the horrible truth of everything. And so cyber was a good example of that. I mean, you learn your lessons that people look at you and they take their pitch from you. So I remember communicating, my first communication eventually was to the whole firm, but was in the London office, and everyone was gathered together. Everyone was just looking petrified. And I walked in, I had a big smile in my face and went, well, it could be worse. It could be raining, which is a bad joke from something else. And everyone laughed. And I went, look, cheer up. It's fine. We will sort it. It's not because they needed that burden off them. Now, was that authentic? It was authentically me, but it wasn't authentically telling them that there's a big problem here and we need to sort it out. And you have to remember, as a leader, this is true of a partner too, but particularly the more senior you get as a leader, the look on your face tells you everything. So if any of my old executive colleagues are listening to this, they will be falling around the floor laughing, because one of the mugs they bought me, in fact, it was my successor who bought it for me, was a mug that I still have at home that says, you can see the look on my face and yet you're still talking. And how you look matters. So when I first became the managing partner, I remember it was about the time when my first child was going to university, and I was quite concerned about where he wanted to go. And I was just thinking about what his grades and stuff that parents do. He did really well, by the way, but in case he listens, probably not. And I walked to the tea point to get a cup of tea, and I came back, and my PA, who'd been my PA, still is my PA for 20 odd years now, then, who, came in. She shut the door behind her and said, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Is everything all right with the business?" I said, "As far as I know." What have you seen, Lynn, that I need to know? And she said, "It's just that you look so worried as you were walking to the tea point. A few people are out there chatting, saying there must have something gone wrong with the business because Simon's looking so worried." I was thinking about my child in university. I wasn't thinking about it. So you do have to accept you're on show, and you have to think about how you look all the time.
Indeed. So how crucial is resilience to being successful as a partner in whatever guise you are as a
I
partner?
think it is. I think it is. There's a guy called who you also know, Andrew Darwin, who became our senior partner, and he recruited me to DLO, or
Indeed, you
one of
did.
them,
Yep.
as you know. And I think one of the nicest things Andrew ever said to me, because for those who know Andrew, he's great, but he's quite straight door individual. Deeply
Yeah.
proud for me to hear me say that. And he said, "You are the most resilient person I've ever come across." And I do think at any level you have to have a level of resilience. I think it is very hard, and I think it's getting harder in law. The pressures that come with
Mhm.
clients, with technology, with the competition, AI, everything that's going on. I do think resilience is a prerequisite of a successful career, in at least in private commercial practice.
Yeah. Okay. So do you think that partners coming, if you were where you'd been just before you were made a partner
Yeah.
30 years ago, whenever it was, if you're there now, are there different skills that you think you need now to be a successful partner that compared to then?
Yeah, I actually don't. I mean, back in 1997, if there's anyone around who are partners, then might disagree with me, but I don't think it was as stressful.
Okay.
I really don't. I think you have more time. You have more time to make decisions.
Mhm.
You have more time to deal with people. People were less demanding in your teams.
Mhm.
Clients
Mhm.
were less demanding.
Mhm.
You didn't have the same sort of arrangements. You didn't have technology on your case all the time trying to beat you to the answer. I think it was just as driven a career as it was, there was just more time to do things. And I think that's where the resilience comes in now, because you get very little time to do anything.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Okay, so just moving on to when you move firms, obviously you mentioned that you've been at three law firms.
Yeah.
How did you find those moves in terms of how well you were integrated into your new environment?
It's an interesting question, because I was going to say the first move I made, I don't think
Mm.
I was integrated that. There's not a criticism of the firm, but I don't think I really was integrated particularly well, and had to do my own integration, if you like.
Right. Yeah.
The second firm, which was DLA, I was integrated well, but there was a huge difference. I joined the first firm I moved to, that was at the time Denton Hall, before it
Yeah.
became Denton's, but lovely firm. But I was a junior partner. I was very junior. And so, no one was making a big plan for me about how to integrate. I just had to go around introducing myself to people and
Mm.
get on with it. When I went to DLA, I went with a team of 50 people
Mm.
to build a business as the global group head.
Yeah.
So, of course, everyone was talking to me because I was in the senior management team, and I was known. It was in the front page of the newspapers and
Mm.
everything else
Mm.
that you know about. So, it's not a good comparison, but I think the truth is firms generally do a poor job of integrating people at all levels. I think we tried really hard at DLA Piper. I'm sure all firms try really hard, but people are busy. They're focused on what they have to do. They have one meeting and say, "This is fine, and now let's all move on." And before long, you find yourself sitting there
Mm.
not having a clue about how to meet anyone. And the only way to deal with that, and I've said this to people before, and I've said this to my own kids in their jobs before, is I'm afraid you've got to mug people at the tea point, not literally,
Mm.
of course, but you've got to introduce yourself. You've got to go up to people, and it's
Mm.
awkward, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes if it's more senior people, they might look at you, you're thinking, well, are they busy and they don't really want, but you got to do it somehow. So you just have to like grit your teeth and go for it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because firms spend so much time and money recruiting people, and
It's
yet often
madness.
don't integrate them. And then when things don't work out, which, as we both know, often happens quite a lot, and I'm going to come on to that in a
Yeah.
second, they kind of generally blame the lateral for things not working out, and don't necessarily introspectively look at themselves for not integrating. And I'm not sure it happens in other industries quite in the same way as in law. And I don't understand why.
I'm not sure if I understand. I'd agree with your observation that I think it is particularly bad in law. I don't think it's through any malevolence or bad intent. I just think people focus on the task. The task is getting someone in, the task is
Yeah.
recruiting. You're back to lawyers being very task
Mm,
driven organizations. And then they just sort of forget about it a little bit and move on. I think it's partly the culture of the business and the people who are in
mm,
the business. I think it's also because, however hard law firms have tried to build teams, it's still largely an individual pursuit.
yeah.
It's like there are some sporting competitions, tennis, golf, where they are fundamentally individual pursuit sporting events. And then you have Ryder Cup, Davis Cup, you have
Mm,
events where you sort of slightly artificially put people together in a team. And I'm sure they do feel like a team, but it's not the same as football or rugby where you can't play the game without anybody else being around you. And I think law is still a bit of an individual pursuit. I think that is part of the issue.
despite firms talking obviously a lot about collegiality and being teams.
Yeah, and I don't think people say firms say it because they don't believe in it or because they don't try or because it's not true. I think there are levels of collegiality in firms within your team, within your group, within your office. And at the end of the day, if you're in a football team and someone messes up and you lose 1-0, you've all lost 1-0. In a law firm, if someone in your office has a bad billing year, I mean, assuming it doesn't affect the overall profits of the firm,
Mm,
you can still go home feeling happy because you had a good year.
yeah.
It's just different.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, as someone who's been directly and indirectly responsible for recruiting a lot of laterals who presumably were successful partners before you recruited them, otherwise you wouldn't have
Yeah,
recruited them.
yeah.
What are the sort of 2 or 3 reasons you think they either succeed or fail when you recruited them?
I think some of it is about the basis in which they come in. So some of it is about integration. I think some of it is about personalities. I don't know whether law firms and the partners really, I think law firms have cultures just as much as human beings do. And I don't know
Mm,
whether
mm,
enough focus is put on matching the cultures of the
okay.
individuals as opposed to looking at the numbers and the business case.
Mm, mm,
And I think that's probably an issue. I think law firms do put often unreasonable amount of pressure on laterals coming in,
yeah.
but I think sometimes the laterals really have done it to themselves because if you push it too hard and you push for that harder deal,
Mm,
there's a bit of implicit resentment of, okay, well, you pushed me, you better go and deliver then.
mm,
So the advice I tend to keep people moving is don't ask for the best deal ever. Just do something that you think is fair and reasonable. If you're really good, you'll get rewarded anyway, and it makes the law firm feel better. In fact, in various pieces of consulting and different advisory stuff I'm doing at the moment, I had someone say to me the other day about a potential deal. Look, if it works out, we could pay you a bonus on the basis of all these pots of stuff. And I went, "Ah, let's just not bother. Like, if at the end of the year you're happy with me, you'll pay me a bonus, and if you're not, you won't."
mm,
And I do think there has to be an element of trust and cultural alignment so you don't have that pressure and target on your back. I think there has to be a showing of responsibility and accountability. And I think where that happens, you've got a better chance, you've got a chance to grow. And where it doesn't, sometimes it just fails, not because the partners, it
mm.
was a bad hire or the partner isn't any good, just because you haven't given people the opportunity to thrive and you put too much pressure on the individual.
Yeah, I think certainly that when you mention cultural kind of matching, I think that's a very good point. Quite detailed and difficult thing to do
It
for
is.
law firms, and is EQ based as well, which law firms are often not great at. As you say, it's easier just to look at the business cases and work out if they're going to be a good match. So I thought that's very interesting. I used to be amazed as a recruiter and I can think of one occasion, and it was with your old firm actually. I won't name who it was with, who wanted the Lateral in question to to basically to deliver more than any of the partners in their group were delivering. And I remember having a conversation saying, "How's that ever going to happen? And how could that happen? And what's that say about your own partners?" If that's that. So I remember finding that absolutely amazing.
It's just not realistic, right? And then, of course, what happens is the individual comes in. They're probably going to be very sharp-elbowed. They're going to start really annoying everyone. And then people react badly to them. You can see how this terrible cycle is going to continue because you've not given people the time and the space to do that, what they need to do. Equally, it works both ways. I've seen laterals come in and I've had 3 months later people knocking on my door saying, if that person says at my old firm, I don't want to hear how they keep doing it at their old firm. Like, they're at this firm now. And that is EQ. That's definitely EQ.
That is definitely EQ. I can understand. Do you think it makes a difference when you have laterals coming into departments where they are one of 10 or 11 partners or 6 or 7 partners compared to when they're coming in maybe into a new business area or only one of 2 partners as to the chances of their success?
I'm not sure I don't necessarily think that. I've seen people work both ways. In fact, I've seen people coming into a small group and it's great because the small group wanted them and they're just happy to get someone. The one thing I would say is I have not heard of, I'm sure when someone listens to this, they'll send you an email giving you examples, but I have not seen or heard of a reputable team move that has failed as opposed to individual partners. I think teams are the holy grail for many law firms because it makes a big difference. Now, the only difference you have with the team is that the team never integrates. It just sits out on its own.
Yes.
So you've got to work very hard at that integration piece. But from a financial point of view, it works incredibly successfully if you're fortunate enough to be in that position.
Well, obviously you were part of a large team. So
yeah. I mean, we finished on one day. I mean, we did effectively a managed workout from the business we were in, but we finished on a Thursday. They moved the files on a Friday. Everyone was in the office working on a Monday. I mean, that was it.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Because I know, obviously, if that can happen, that probably raises the chances of success quite a lot, doesn't it? Compared to, I think garden leave can be very effective in stopping business moving, more effective than people think.
I mean, I've never, everyone's done it, but I'm not a massive fan of garden leave. It tends to annoy clients quite a lot, understandably, but it can be effective, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, there's something fundamentally odd if you think about it, Stephen. I mean, I've got friends who work in industry and they just look at me in amazement at how vitriolic people moving from one law firm to another can become. And they go, well, this is mad. I used to work for Ford and now I work for Honda. I'm making that up. But, I mean, like, so what? I mean, and there is something really rather ridiculous at times, I think, about how personally law firms take this stuff.
I agree, but that's probably for a different podcast than this one. You've mentioned previously bits of advice that you were given, after partners meetings and things. Are there kind of some key pieces of advice that you've been given during your partnership career that you think had a positive or negative effect?
Yeah, I mean, I've, talked about some of those things. I mean, I've spent a lot of time, I do a bit of teaching at business schools, and I've spent a lot of time looking at reading about what people do, and some people have been successful. You see great quotes and stuff. And I tend to look up those a lot. I did lots of vlogs and the good or bad and talks and town halls and goodness knows how many over the 10 years when I was the head of the firm. As everyone will tell you, I do a lot of them with quotes. When I had my leaving dinner, I did it. I did 8 lessons I'd learned with a quote in each.
Oh, did you? Right, okay.
Yeah, which people found sort of amusing, I think. Well, maybe not after I'd gone on for too long, but they did for a while. But we started talking about things like leadership and stuff, and there's a whole bunch of quotes around that. But the ones that have sort of stuck with me are, one is sort of amusing and the other 2 are serious. The amusing one was, and you may have heard of some of these, was Eisenhower. And Eisenhower's quote was, leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you don't want to do.
Right.
It's not entirely wrong, that, by the way, but it's sort of amusing the way you put it. But the ones that I've talked about, one, lots of people who've worked with me have heard me say so many times, if they're listening, they'll be sick of me hearing it, from Steve Jobs, but I'll come back to it in a minute. One is by a guy called John Maxwell, who's a US author, and he's written on
Okay.
some different things. And he talks about the greatest leader is not the one who does the greatest things, it's the one who inspires others to do the greatest things. And I do think that is really important. It is about legacy. It's about what you have left and what you've built, not about you personally.
Mm.
It's a bad narcissists make bad leaders fundamentally. And the Steve Jobs one, which everyone has heard me say a lot at DLA Piper, but it's the one that I've used the most, is being the richest man in the graveyard doesn't matter, but going to bed at night saying we've done something wonderful together is what matters. And I use that a lot because this is a sector that is becoming ever more obsessive about who is the richest person.
Mm.
And I don't think that makes you a good individual or a good business. I'm not, again, from 1 second suggesting that you don't want to be successful commercially, but I don't think that should be your only end goal. I think focusing on the legacy and how you can inspire others is a much better lesson than focusing on becoming the richest person.
That's interesting you mentioned that, actually, because it brings to mind someone who is well known, but obviously I won't name, who said to me after their move from a successful UK firm to a very successful US firm after 3 or 4 years, said, I don't know what to do. I've got no time to spend the extra money I'm earning. I don't, he said, it's not really relevant to me. I'm trying to give it away. He said, but I've got no time to even focus on that.
And then where does it get you? So I think there's important. By the way, there's loads of quotes here. The other quotes I
Yes.
should say, not quite on leadership, but just about culture in a business, about being thoughtful and receptive to people, was an Arsene Wenger one. I only throw that in for your purposes. But Arsene Wenger, he said it wasn't just the process. That was a different Arsenal manager. But he said, we live in a society where everyone knows everything, and yet you can't say, it's a shame for you to say, I don't know. And he's right about that. We do live in a society where you can't ever say, I don't know, it's seen as a weakness, but you shouldn't be judgmental about these things, and people should be allowed to time and space to grow.
I thought you were going to give the one where he said about Alex Ferguson, everyone thinks they have the best looking wife at home, which went down completely the wrong way, if you remember. Alex Ferguson thought he was having a go at his wife.
His wife. Yeah, exactly right.
I mean, looking ahead briefly, well, first was as agile working, do you think has helped or hindered partner success?
I was with I won't say the name of the person, that would be very unfair, but not that it's a bad comment, but a partner, a female partner in a reasonably senior position in one of the big international city law firms. And she was talking about how challenging her life is because she has 2 kids at school and how she has to balance that, and all entirely legitimate, but also was saying, but it makes me better. I can work at home from 10 till midnight or whatever. And then I think of my wife, who was a partner in a law firm, and at a time when when we had our 3 children, she had to go into the office to do things on a weekend or whenever at night. She didn't have the ability to put them to bed and then work again. So I'm taking agile in its broadest form to start with. I know where you're going with that, but in its broadest form, agile using technology has definitely helped people try and manage their lives better. Agile in terms of, do you attend an office? I still think helps. I think as long as you can be organized and get people in on the days they need to be in to work together as a team and get to know each other, I think it's fine. I don't have the same hang-ups about it as some people do.
Okay, that's interesting. So what other factors do you think may affect success in the future as far as a law firm partner is concerned? Also, we've got the effect of AI, but
the business of law is changing. I mean, as you said at the beginning in the introduction, I'm particularly interested in this. I spend a lot of time talking to people involved in the technology world and the PE world. And if you spend enough time talking to people in both those areas, you can see that the business of law cannot possibly be immune. from those things, nor should it be, frankly. So I think there is going to be more change in the legal world. I don't think the hourly rate model as it exists at the moment can survive forever. And I don't think the hourly rates can go up forever. They will for certain things. The bigger law firms are going to be faced with the challenge, which is how can they still get that level of profit and yet maintain a firm in the current structure? Because the truth is that many clients will pay significant sums for the best corporate litigator, whatever it is out there, not the whole team, but someone's got to pay for the whole team for the pyramid to work and drive through people for the future, even if AI is doing a lot of those jobs. So I think there is a lot of structural and cultural change coming in the legal sector. My worry is that lawyers put their heads in the sand and they just don't want to think about it. And I think that's a mistake, because if history tells you anything, that when technology is relevant to your business and there are other forms of financing and alternative business mechanisms to offer some of that value, it will happen whether you like it or not. And you either get with the program or you don't. The flip side is, I think there's huge opportunities for some firms, particularly, to be honest, some of the mid-market firms that haven't made their move yet, who get the chance to build the firm they want to build using technology and or different forms of financing and different systems in a way that a lot of the big firms can't. So it's going to be a very interesting sector over the next 10 years.
So do you think all those changes in terms of what makes a successful partner, how do you think that will change the attributes that we've talked about?
I think the basic human elements won't change at all, because I think they are basic human elements that I suspect if you were talking to people in lots of businesses, they would say the same thing. I do think, however, being able to work with technology and offer services side by side with people who are not legally qualified but have other skills is going to be very important.
Okay.
And so I think those skills will change as a partner and a leader of a business, because you'll have to learn to run a more diverse business in terms of what it offers and the skills that you need to provide and have in your workforce than you would have done 10 years ago.
And that does need different skills to deal with
It does, yeah.
non-lawyers.
It does need different skills, because these are, I never, I understand what I said, but I never used to talk, in DLA, I never talked about non-lawyers. I always just talked about other experts and professionals, which, because they were, and they had a different view, and that is going to take a different type of skill, which may ultimately mean that lawyers are not the best people to run law firms.
Yeah.
I think, 10 years ago, for the past 10 years, people have been saying lawyers haven't been the best people to run law firms. I disagree, actually, because of the way law wasn't set up. Then, honestly, I think they were, but I'm not sure that will be the case over the next decade.
Okay.
And I'll be watching from a beach with a cocktail.
Okay, so we're moving towards the end. So I've got a couple of questions, which I have to confess were kind of stolen from another podcast, not law related. Hopefully they won't mind. What are you
telling an IP like that? Yeah.
Well, if I get a cease and desist,
I'll defend you.
Although you might interject. What are your 3 non-negotiable behaviours for you and your team to ensure success?
Okay, honesty. No politicking. It's virtually impossible, but no politicking, and commitment to the cause. Common commitment to the cause. I want my team to be honest, call people out when they've done something wrong, or say, yeah, I messed up. I do not want them climbing over the backs of other people to get to me or to anyone else or the client. And I want them to have an aligned commitment to the cause.
You mean the cause of the law firm?
The client cause and the law firm. Yeah, the law firm, but also to whatever matter we're working on. So it could be the firm cause or the client cause, but I want them aligned to work together as a team, not to be looking at who got which job and who got to do the presentation and all that stuff.
Okay, good. And finally, what's your one golden rule to be a successful partner?
You know what I'm going to say? Listen.
I thought you might.
Yeah. Listen.
So that's great. Well, listen, Simon, thank you for being our first guest on Beyond Billables.
Pleasure. I've loved it.
Law Firm Partners. It's been absolutely fascinating to hear you and your thoughts on what makes a successful partner, and we're really grateful to have you on. So join us on our next episode of Beyond Billables, Lessons from Top Law Firm Partners, when we'll have another top partner who will share their secrets of success. See you next time.